Welcome to Cinecaps. Today I will show you a crime mystery film from 2024 titled Sleeping Dogs. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. Roy Freeman is a retired homicide detective who underwent an experimental Alzheimer's treatment, leaving him with permanent scars on his head. Even to simply navigate through his own house, he has to leave taped markings and explanations. Still, that doesn't save him from a few minor errors. Receiving a call, Roy finds himself struggling to even remember his own name. Roy is questioned about an old case of his and suggests meeting in person. At a diner, Emily mentions that a man he interrogated 10 years ago, Isaac, wishes to speak with him before the death row sentence arrives, but Roy has no recollection of the man. Back at home, Roy discovers the case in his cabinet. As he sifts through his old belongings and reviews the details of the case, faint memories from that investigation begin to resurface. Roy visits Isaac in prison, who wants to know how it feels to see an innocent man die. Roy had reviewed Isaac's case and found out that Isaac confessed, but the confession was pretty much forced by Roy's partner, Jimmy. Isaac wasn't thinking straight when he signed the confession. In Isaac's recollection of the events, he went to talk to the victim, Vitor, to retract his witness statement about a DA case, something that impacts the custody of his son. But when Isaac arrived at Vitor's house 10 years ago, an unknown man snuck in as well and beat Vitor to death. He swears he had nothing to do with Vitor's death and wants Roy to go over the case one more time. For the treatment to be successful, Roy has to stimulate his brain by solving puzzles, deciding to take a peek in Isaac's case, starting with Richard Finn. Isaac mentioned that Richard went to see him in prison for his book. Following a lead on Richard, Roy pays a visit to his ex-partner, Jimmy, who warmly welcomes him. Jimmy explains how his wife passed away from cancer and the insurance refused to pay for her treatment. Roy opens up about his memory issues and delves into Isaac's case, expressing his belief in Isaac's innocence. As they review the details, Roy points out that Richard's fingerprints were found all over the crime scene, contradicting his statement of never having been there. Roy finds this discrepancy suspicious and asks Jimmy to consider its significance. Hesitantly, Jimmy agrees to look into it. Jimmy is reluctant to let this case resurface. Back at home, Roy finds out he was dismissed from the task for driving under influence and slowly starts to recall details of his life. Receiving a call from Jimmy, he notifies him that he found Richard Finn. He overdosed on fentanyl, but there's only one needle hole, not much of a junkie. Suddenly Roy recalls seeing Richard the next morning of Vitor's murder. With his prints all over the house, his alibi is that he was home alone at the time of murder and they never followed it up. It doesn't make sense to Roy. At Richard's funeral, Roy approaches Richard's brother, who shares insights into Richard's recent demeanor. He describes Richard as agitated and paranoid in the last couple of years. Additionally, he denies that Richard was involved with drugs, stating that it wasn't his thing. Roy receives a significant item from Richard's brother, a memoir titled Book of Mirrors, which Richard had been working on. Later that evening, Roy decides to read Richard's book, which discusses Vitor's death as misunderstood. He attributes everything that happened because of a single spectacular woman, Laura Baines. Double bachelor in art history and neuroscience, a master's in maths and spoke 5 languages. Back then, at the mixer party, Laura approached Richard with flirtatious intent. She was friends with Vitor. The encounter made the two singles go to the nearby cabinet and mingle. And let me tell you, Laura was into some hardcore stuff. From that moment on they were inseparable, for the next few months. But then Richard's father died from a heart attack and his mother couldn't afford his tuition. This leads Laura to introduce Richard to Professor Vitor. Vitor warmly welcomes them to dinner at his place and explains about the research he and Laura are working on. It's about memories and how the mind blocks traumatic experiences from the past. But during this, Richard sees Laura and Vitor hold hands, which puts everything into question. All of this is still part of Richard's book. Then Vitor shows Richard his personal library and offers $500 a week to organize the books. This is Vitor's way of helping Richard with his tuition. Richard explains that working for Vitor was like a dream. For every 2 books he cataloged, he read another. Eventually working for Vitor exposed him to the truth. A laugh, a hand on Vitor's arm. Laura was more than just Vitor's research fellow. He learned this when Laura canceled dinner on him. This led him to finding her and Vitor being intimate on campus. While working on sorting books, Richard found a manuscript, Book of Mirrors, written by Vitor. That's when Vitor called him for dinner and suggested that he should stop seeing Laura, to not make things too overly complicated. He didn't plan to, but didn't even get the chance. As he arrived home, Laura was already gone. Then the next day Vitor was found dead. Isaac had confessed to the crime. Then Richard found out Laura went to see Susan, a defense attorney, about the manuscript, Book of Mirrors, insisting that she wrote it, but Vitor just put his name on it. They couldn't do anything about it. After the murder, she disappeared. Until Richard saw her again. And that is where Richard's book ends, leaving Roy furious that it ends on such a cliffhanger. Roy confides in Jimmy how Laura just disappeared. She has no address, no social media, nothing. Same with Vider's caretaker, it's like everyone from Vider's life at that time is now a ghost. His only lead right now is Richard's ex-wife. Roy is convinced Isaac is innocent. But Jimmy just wants to let it go. Hallucinations are a common byproduct of the treatment Roy went through. At the clinic, the doctor explains that it's actually a positive sign, indicating that his neural pathways are starting to reactivate. The treatment is working. He later visits Richard's ex-wife, Dana, who shares similar insights with Roy, affirming that while Richard had his flaws, he was never involved with drugs. Dana brings up a woman named Elizabeth, indicating that she might have been connected to Richard's death. She recalls a heated argument Richard had with Elizabeth over the phone one night, screaming, "You won't get away with this." Dana took note of the number when Richard fell asleep and dialed it the next day, reaching voicemail. However, she remains unaware of who this Elizabeth could be. Roy starts to slowly assemble all the pieces together. Searching Elizabeth's name, he finds that Laura now goes by the name of Elizabeth. He locates Laura's residence and approaches her. Suddenly, Roy has a faint recollection of meeting her before. When he mentions Richard's name, Laura hesitates, revealing that he had been stalking her and expressing surprise at his passing. Roy hands her Richard's memoir, emphasizing that if she possesses any information regarding Vider's death, a man's life is at stake. After taking medicine at home, Roy starts to recall more memories about Laura. He receives a message that his search results regarding Wayne's location came in. Wayne was Vider's attendant. Arriving at the given address, the ambience of the place is eerie with Metallica blasting on full volume. Roy makes his presence known by turning the music down. Wayne never gave his statement to the police, since they already had a suspect, Isaac, so for the sake of checking all the boxes, Roy asks him to tell his story. Wayne reminisces about how Vider was like a celebrity, revered by everyone. Although Wayne was unsure of Vider's exact occupation, he frequently met with influential individuals, including government officials. Vider sought out individuals with PTSD, and Wayne was a perfect fit due to his service in Iraq. Vider promised to help erase those memories, offering a treatment involving confronting the traumas and taking medication he had developed. While it initially helped, Wayne experienced severe side effects from the pills. In the car, Roy probes Wayne about Laura. Wayne expresses uncertainty, noting that Laura was always enigmatic. He also is unsure if Vider and Laura were ever a thing, mentioning that Vider was quite popular with the ladies and had a collection of old recordings with them. He vividly recalls the night Vider died, a heated argument involving Laura, Richard, and Vider. Wayne intended to inquire Richard about the nature of the dispute but never saw him leave. This contradicts Richard's statement of being home alone at the time of the murder. However, Wayne distinctly remembers seeing Laura depart in a taxi later that day. Wayne himself has an alibi, he was at the bar, and the bartender Diana can verify that. Just as Wayne drops Roy off at his place and he's out of sight, he calls someone relaying that Roy's home. Roy meticulously reviews witness statements, verifying Diana's account of Wayne's presence that night. Intriguingly, he notices a discrepancy. Diana's statement was taken solely by Jimmy, contradicting the usual practice of Roy and Jimmy conducting interviews together. This raises his suspicions about potential tampering. Suddenly a knock distracts him. It's Laura, returning Richard's book. Roy invites her in, while Jimmy quietly observes them from his car. Laura chuckles at Roy's investigative efforts, acknowledging the challenge of navigating life without memories. She confesses that Richard's book was pure fiction. Their alleged romance was merely a figment of his imagination. Despite Wayne seemingly corroborating details from the book, Laura dismisses his credibility as well. Roy's insinuations about her involvement in Vider's murder, whether through the book he was working on or the drug-related events Wayne was part of, are promptly refuted by Laura. As she leaves, she notes Roy was much more fun when he liked a good glass of whiskey. Before going to bed, Roy decides to have a snack, but his fridge is empty with mail there, and the cereal has a gun in it. Roy goes to buy some groceries, when a car behind him starts speeding in his direction. Roy quickly unholsters his gun and shoots the driver. Approaching the crashed car, Roy sees that it was Wayne. He calls 911 and is brought into questioning. Jimmy then comes to help him out, noting that some cameras caught Wayne speeding at him, proving he shot in self-defense. Unexpectedly, Jimmy says that the CSI found 2 vials of fentanyl, the same one Richard OD'd on. The police suspect that Wayne killed Richard. But something doesn't sit right with Roy. Why would Wayne do that? Even if Wayne would have killed Vider and Richard somehow knew it, he wouldn't have implicated Laura in his book. Roy finally confronts Jimmy about him missing a signature on Diana's statement. He went through 30 years of case files, noting he never missed a signature. Jimmy doesn't take these accusations lightly, walking out. After years of not even looking at alcohol, Roy pours himself a glass and downs it, and then another one, and another one. Flashbacks with memories flood his mind until he starts to pass out. He wakes up on a couch outside with a note to look for Diana at a nearby pub. Inside, a young man informs Roy of Diana's passing 5 years ago, so they have a shot in her memory. In the bathroom, Roy has another flash of memory, when he receives a call from Susan, who's now working as director in college. She explains how Laura stole Vider's work and published it as her own. She has a huge motive to kill him. Roy then visits Vider's now empty house, hoping to jog his memory. As he walks around, the pieces start to come together. He begins to recall what happened on the day Vider died. It becomes evident that the murder weapon was likely one of the bats from Vider's collection. No one ever found it. Back in the time, a shovel caught his attention. Following his previous instinct, Roy uses a hanger to poke the ground, finding the softer surface and digging up the murder weapon. Laura confronts him, and Jimmy chimes in with a gun, ordering them to get inside. Jimmy notes that Roy just couldn't let it go. Roy starts to understand what is going on after realizing the two know each other. Roy starts to theorize that Jimmy's wife got really sick. He got deep in debt. Laura comes along, pays him to kill Vider so she can publish her book, then he pushes Isaac into confession to cover it all up. Then Laura starts explaining that Jimmy started asking her questions about Vider. She never wanted anything to do with Jimmy, this is why she moved away and changed her name, to get away from him. Completed her research and published the book. Then Richard started poking around and Jimmy was onto it. In evidence he found a similar book to Laura's and used this information to extort money from her. But Jimmy tells Roy not to believe in her BS, he never killed anyone. Jimmy explains Laura killed Richard the same way she killed Vider, through other people. Turns out Wayne was a professional killer. With Richard out of the way, she wanted Wayne to come after Roy. Laura is a manipulator. Then bang! Laura shoots Jimmy, pointing her gun on Roy, she starts yapping and Jimmy takes her out. With Laura dead, and with his last breath Jimmy says, "What I did it for you. The people who knew the real truth are dead." Roy comes with the evidence to the police and exonerates Isaac. Roy's treatment has been very effective and there are no more signs of him losing memory. Finally uncovering a shard of glass from a broken picture frame, Roy's memory begins to click into place. He recalls that he was married to Diana, the same woman from the bar. Diana had been seeing Vider as a psychologist. Laura had informed Roy that Diana was having an affair with Vider, providing him with a recording of her. Seeing his wife with another man filled Roy with rage. The unknown man with the bat walks into Vider's house. The killer Roy was looking for is the man he sees when he looks in a mirror. And Jimmy was there to witness it. Jimmy helped Roy bury the murder weapon. Roy remembers it all, but his memories are now a curse. The end. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more videos like this.